about web and mobile pen testing. I do DevSecOps consulting, and I love reviewing code and stuff. I've got my Twitter handle there, and I do have a YouTube channel as well. So if you are interested, you can subscribe to it, and I do post content here and there. When I'm not doing security, I love to watch soccer and play soccer. I like to go on walks with my dog. So today I'm going to cover, firstly, why we need to do DevSecOps. Then we're going to look at what are the challenges when you are trying to do DevSecOps or try to implement DevSecOps model in your organization. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share some of the real-life challenges from real-world experiences that I've seen while implementing DevSecOps. And then we're going to look at how to overcome these challenges. And again, I would share my personal experiences from real world, what sort of tips I can share with you. And then I'm going to share with you a working DevSecOps pipeline where I've implemented security tooling from open source tooling. And then I'm going to show you what you can actually get out of that pipeline. Last but not least, there are a few tips in the last slide that you can probably take away from this talk and you can start implementing in your own organization. But first thing first, we need to understand what is DevOps. So we know DevOps isn't just about tooling. It isn't about automation. It's actually a combination of lots of practices, lots of philosophies, lots of exercises. Yes, automation and tooling. That's what makes DevOps. What DevOps does, it enables organizations to release software with high velocity. The reason being, because everything in DevOps is automated from, when you obviously the coding hasn't been automated yet, so you still have to write code, but you still have to, when you commit your code, the building, the testing, like unit testing, automated testing, that you can still write some automated tests there. Then you have integration stages, and then your code becomes an artifact, moves between different stages, and then you can deploy that, right? So that's your continuous deployment. So that's what DevOps enables. It enables high velocity, right? And CI and CD, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment or delivery, is the key to DevOps. And we will look at in upcoming slides why. With the help of DevOps, organizations can produce high-quality software, right? They can release software more quickly. They can release more features quickly for their end users. So that, at a high level, what DevOps is about. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview what DevOps is. And I've highlighted some of the keywords, so please keep those keywords in mind. Some of the terminology, some of the technology that we use in DevOps I've highlighted in this diagram. See, you've got repository, version controlling, infrastructure as code, automation, then wherever you deploy your stuff, whether it's containerizations, EC2 instances, and whatnot. So that's at a high level what a DevOps sort of terminologies and technologies look like. There might be more, but that's what we have. Now, we need to look at what is DevSecOps, right? We added sec to DevOps, and that's it, right? Probably not. We have to look at how we can keep up with the high velocity of releases, right? As a security professionals, as a security team, and any organization, we need to look at how can we help teams to provide more continuous assessments and assurances, right? So that's where DevSecOps come in. So DevSecOps is a practice of integrating security tooling as part of your DevOps model or as part of your DevOps cycle or whatever you've got in your organization. So with the help of DevSecOps, we are trying to integrate security in every phase of the DevOps. So if you look at your CI/CD pipelines, you have different stages, and we want to integrate security in every stage possible. And we will look at how in upcoming slides. By doing that, security becomes an integral part of your software delivery, right? And we are not seen as some sort of afterthought that, oh, you're about to release your product and someone says, oh, we haven't done a pen testing. And now you can't find a resource because the lead time is maybe a month or two, so you probably release like that. Therefore, you're exposing yourself and your organizations to, threat actors. So as I was saying, CI/CD is an important part. You have different stages as part of your software delivery. You start from planning and developing, then you commit the code, then you build the artifacts, you test those artifacts against functional testing, unit testing, and then once everything is fine, you deploy that to production, and then you go into the maintenance sort of phase, right? So this is your typical SDLC cycle sort of looks like. We are missing security here, right? But as I said, with DevSecOps, we want to implement security at every phase of the pipeline. Therefore, we can integrate security, these activities that you can see at the bottom, wherever possible, we can, right? We can begin by doing threat modeling. By doing threat modeling, we can pinpoint some of the issues in your design. Because, if you are building on a flawed design, and the product is also going to be flawed, it's going to be filled with vulnerabilities and stuff. So that's threat modeling is just one example, which you can do in the very, very beginning. Then you can even ask your developers to integrate IDE plugins that can do SAST, that can do SCA, that can detect secrets. You can write your own pre-commit hooks. So if someone, developers before committing code to their repositories, if there is anything wrong, you can pick it up before even committing the code. So you can see we can push security to the far left as possible. But then, even though, say, you don't have the IDE plugins and whatnot, we can still implement tooling as part of your build processes. Like you can integrate security as part of continuous integration and stuff. And we can look at how we can do that, like your SAST tooling, your SCA tooling, and whatnot. And then you can see there are lots of other security activities that we can embed. And in this talk, we will look at what sort of challenges we come across when we try to do this in any organization, and then what can we do to overcome those challenges as well. So what are the benefits of doing DevSecOps, right? I'm talking about implementing tooling, but end of the day, what we're going to get out of this by doing DevSecOps? Well, firstly, we're going to identify security vulnerabilities as quickly as possible. So identification of the vulnerability is going to be rapid. If we can identify vulnerabilities quickly, we will be able to remediate those vulnerabilities quite quickly as well. And we will look at how. Then, by doing DevSecOps, our security is continuous. It's not about just doing one pen test end of the day. Every time you're releasing something, by having an automated tooling in between, you will be able to provide a continuous assurance to your teams, to your applications, to your customers. Then, it also enables us to collaborate more because the teams are working in silos if you don't do DevSecOps. The DevOps team is working here, security team is working here, security team probably doesn't even have visibility what is going on in here. So security teams are just playing catch up. They probably find that tomorrow there is going to be a new release that's actually going to have a bigger impact on your organization, and now they want to do security testing, but it's already too late. So you are playing catch-ups there. By doing DevSecOps, you're going to collaborate more. So DevOps team might come to you if the tooling is embedded and say, oh, could you help us triage this security issue? Or could you provide us more information on the security issue that is picked up by this tooling? So you're going to collaborate more. DevSecOps is also cost-effective. In the upcoming slide, I'll show you why it is cost-effective. But yeah, it is actually going to help you, save some money as well. Then, by doing DevSecOps, you can prove to your third parties, organizations, maybe, and also as part of your compliance, you can show it to your customers that, look, you are taking security seriously. Why? Because you are providing continuous assurance as part of your application delivery. So these are some of the benefits of doing DevSecOps. Let's look at what is the traditional approach, or, you probably in your organization, you probably still use this method of doing security testing. Let's look at how. So these are your typical CI/CD stages, right? So you go through, your artifact moves through different phases. You're building stuff. Then, you move from one stage to the other. All is fine. Oh, okay, let's get a pen test done, right? Now, pen test has, in your pen test, you picked up a SQL injection. So by the time you get a pen test done, maybe it's a month before you have put your application in production or even before you go live. So that pen test has picked up a SQL injection. Now, what's going to happen? You probably know that this is a critical application to your business. You can't leave SQL injection running in the production environment. So you're going to ask your developers to fix it, right? So you go back again to the whole, where you started. So you're going to ask your developers to drop everything, fix this vulnerability, because this is very critical to us, right? So this is probably the typical cycle that you see in your organizations, like where you get a pen test done, then you go back to from where you started, and now you're going to have to fix that stuff. Developers have to drop everything and focus on that. Maybe by the time you get this vulnerability fixed, it's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even 4 weeks, right? But that application you're not taking down in production, it's still out there, someone to actually exploit that vulnerability on. Now, let's look at the shift left approach, right? Again, we have got the same stages, but this time what we have done is we've integrated a security tooling in our build stage. What tooling? Maybe static application security testing, which reviews your source code, right? So developers committed their code, the PR is merged, our security tooling, which is working in an automated fashion. I'm not sitting there clicking through, it kicked in, it picked up SQL injection vulnerability, right? Now, that tool's gonna provide that feedback back to developers saying in real time that there is a SQL injection, right? Maybe it's false positive, maybe it's true positive, depending on what sort of tooling you're using. But the feedback is in real time. I didn't have to wait for a pen test, to tell me that. Am I saying we don't need pen testing? We do need pen testing from independent assurance perspective or compliance perspective. But with DevOps and with the velocity of the releases, we just do one pen test and think, oh, okay, it is all done now. So you can look at maybe your organizations where you get one pen test done, but since that pen test, how many times you have released to production for that particular application? So who's providing you assurance for those releases? Probably no one. So by doing this, what you can do is, look, your code wouldn't move to the next phase if you're failing the pipelines, if you have that tooling set to that. That means your code isn't gonna move to the next phase. You have to fix it before you go to the next phase. It's going to create some friction. We're going to talk about it, how to sort of overcome that as well. Now, it's so well and good, I've talked about the benefits. I've talked about, why we need to do DevSecOps, and, it's easy. It's not. So that's where the DevSecOps challenges come in. And I'm going to share some real-world examples with you. What are those challenges? The first thing first, lack of budgeting, right? Probably you have tried to do DevSecOps in your organizations, and you probably didn't get the budget approved. You love this tool. The higher up didn't approve that, and you like, okay, cool, we can't do DevSecOps, and that's pretty much it. Probably not. We will look at some of the what other things we can do if the budgeting is an issue. But by having no budget, you're probably not able to hire skilled people in your organization as well. Right? You probably want to bring in maybe a third party to do some work for you. Probably lack of budgeting is actually stopping you from doing that as well. So that's the first challenge in any organization. Second thing is a cultural shift. As I was talking about, when you're working in silos, your DevOps team is working here, security is working here, they're not talking to each other. But when you're trying to do DevSecOps, it's actually not going to work if you don't change that whole mindset. If your organization isn't telling your users or all the team, look, this is the key goal, that we have to, take security seriously. If it doesn't come from the top, it's not going to change. No matter how many tools you integrate, no matter how many shiny products you put in your pipelines, nothing's going to change. So you have to work towards a common goal, and the goal is that you have to stop putting vulnerabilities in your production environments. So that's the goal that you should be sort of working towards. Also, you may not even have a platform where DevOps teams and security teams can collaborate. DevOps teams are slacking, and you are creating Teams channels, and that's not going to work. So to establish like a common platform where all of these teams can come together, work together, and collaborate. Another thing is, if, because it's also a mindset, right? So the DevOps teams are working towards, this is the release that we have to put in production. Security teams are sitting there, oh, okay, we have to, do risk mitigations, or we have to catch risks. But that's because since they don't have any visibility, they don't know what is going to actually go to production. So you also have a lack of visibility from security teams' perspective. So these are some of the cultural challenges that you're going to face as well. The next thing, I think I've sort of covered, but skill set and knowledge gap. If you don't have a platform where these teams can come together, where security professionals within your organization can come together and present on some technical topics to the developers or people who are interested in security, no one's going to go and automatically become, aware of security and what security code practices that you want them to follow. So you have to have some sort of common platform where these guys can come together. Another thing, since you lack budgeting, you're probably not going to be able to bring skilled people in your organizations either. Right? So that's what that skill set and knowledge gap is also going to be a tricky one. Tool chain integration. This is a key for any organization who wants to do DevSecOps. First thing first, as security professionals, we probably want to use this security tooling as part of the, as part of the DevOps stages. But that security tooling probably doesn't even fit or not even compatible with your CI/CD pipelines. So the DevOps teams aren't going to like that. They're going to be like, okay, you put the tool, but we're not going to even look at the output of this tool. So that's another problem. Or the tooling that you're trying to implement, it's not even compatible. Like it's manual. It requires someone to click through. But DevOps isn't about ClickOps, right? It's all automated stuff. Another challenge you might be facing is unaudited open source tooling that your teams might already be using as their day-to-day stuff. So who's looking after the security of those tools? Probably no one. If you haven't defined how to use or how to pick up tools and how to implement those tools in your environment, people's going to download something random from GitHub, which is no longer maintained and probably filled with vulnerabilities, but they're still using that as part of their day-to-day. So that's another problem. The last point is key, the friction over pipeline failures. So as a security professionals, if we say we want to fail pipelines because the tool has picked up security vulnerabilities, that's not going to fly well with the developers because you're stopping them from releasing to production. And there are a few things that I will share which can hopefully help you overcome that challenge as well. And then role the responsibilities, last thing. Developers are thinking security is responsible for finding all the issues, and that's wrong. In DevOps, as I was saying, building it, you are also responsible. Security is there to advise you. Security is there to create guardrails. Security is there to make you aware of secure coding practices, standards, and all of that stuff. They are there to provide you security training, but they're not going to sit next to you and start finding vulnerabilities. The tooling that they've implemented there, it's your job as a DevOps teams to look at that output. If something doesn't make sense, then you include security. Your security engineers, they're not going to sit there watching your pipelines 24/7. That's as a DevOps team's responsibility to look at that stuff. So that's why if you haven't defined those roles and responsibilities as part of your DevSecOps framework, there's going to be confusion, there's going to be some misunderstandings, who's responsible for what. And that might be already happening in your organizations. Right. So what can we do to overcome these challenges? Well, start small. What do I mean by that? If you are going to prove to your organization that DevSecOps is important, you don't have to go and start buying shining tools to begin with. All you have to do is pick up an application that probably is not so critical, but still somehow it still has value for your organization. Pick that application if it's built using maybe a modern stack. If it's using CI/CD pipeline, great. Pick that application and use your security tooling against that application. Because if it's modern application using CI/CD, it's already a win for you. So start with that application. Don't go for something that's like classic application. It's not even using pipelines or anything like that. So don't do that. Pick something that is already using pipelines, smaller, and using modern stack. Another thing is, because by doing that, what you can, it's actually going to make your life easier if you pick up on a small application and prove the value to your organization. But by doing DevSecOps, this is what we can do. And we will look at a few other things as well. Next thing, start with open source tooling. As I was saying, you don't have to go and buy a commercial tool. Am I saying you don't need commercial tooling? No, you need commercial tooling, but to prove the value to your organization, you can begin your journey by only using open source tools. There are lots of open source tools out there that you can leverage, right? There are lots of static application security testing tools. OWASP ZAP is great for dynamic application security testing. You can tweak it to the way you like it, and it's awesome. Again, later on, once your DevSecOps maturity is increasing, then you can look at some open source, you can look at commercial alternatives, because commercial tooling will provide you with less false positive, and that's where open source tooling lacks. Some examples of open source toolings that are put there that you can use for doing container scanning, SAST, DAST, and you can see all the rest. So this is like all the alternatives that you can use as part of your DevSecOps journey. Create a DevSecOps framework, because if you don't have a framework, you're not going to know what sort of security capabilities are there. So like, for example, you can look at this example where it's a nice picture, talks about here, for example, different stages of your pipelines, and then different security activities that you can embed as part of your each stage. So you can see by creating a DevSecOps framework, as a security team, we are showcasing to the organization that these are the capabilities that we have. Do you need to have all of these things? Probably not. Even if you can do threat modeling, static application security testing, software composition analysis well, that's still a big, big step. Even if you can catch 20% of the issues using your tools before they go live to production, I think it's still a big win. But as you mature, you can start implementing more and more automation as part of your SDLC. But as you can see, there are lots of things that you can do. Establish Security Champions program. And why is that important? Because it's going to help you decentralize your security. People who are passionate about security in your organization, you have to invest in them. From real-world examples, I can tell you, we passionately start the Security Champions program. A month later, nobody really cares about that Security Champions program. And I can tell you from experience again, when it's implemented well, it actually pays off. So you have to take this bit really seriously, because you're not going to be able to hire security engineers for each and every squad. Therefore, it's your responsibility as a team, as a security professionals, that you train these people who are passionate about security, who really give a, they care about security. And then you have to measure, you have to put a proper plan in place for these people as well, that, okay, what it actually means to have a security champion. As part of like some of the deliveries that I've done, I made sure the security champions are capable of doing threat modeling for these for these teams. So you train them on doing threat modeling, and they will help do threat modeling within their teams. So security consultants or engineers don't have to be across all of these teams. And actually, you have to reward them, send them to these sort of conferences, or KiwiCon, or DEF CON. So upskill your existing resources, right? So if we can't bring resources in, we have to upskill our existing resources, right? And it goes hand in hand with security champions as well. Like, I've seen so many developers who are really keen on learning about security. They probably want to be a future security engineer or security consultant. You have to look at those people. You have to train them, right? You have to establish a common platform where you can share this knowledge. Take them through OWASP Top 10. Take them through OWASP API Top 10. Showcase to them mobile pen testing, web application pen testing looks like. Show to them how to write secure coding, what are the parameterized queries to prevent injections and whatnot. You have to do all of that. You have to train your existing resources, and then they're going to become your voice, and then they're going to help you achieve awesomeness. Cross-functional collaboration, same thing. Common platform. You need to talk to more and more people. You need to establish the same channel that DevOps people are comfortable using. If they are using Slack and you're using Teams, it's not going to work. So establish one channel, invite everyone, look at comments, create, if someone gives you a good idea, create an ADO ticket, track it, bring it up, do these meetings every fortnightly to monthly with these people, and then I think that's going to really, really help. It's going to go a long, long way. Risk-based approach for pipeline release. I talked about if we implement a security tooling, and if that tooling starts to fail the pipelines, developers aren't going to like it because you're stopping their releases. Say I implemented a tool last week, for example, which is going to fail pipeline even if it detects a low vulnerability. That's not going to fly in any organization because I'm not releasing to my customers, right? So that's where the risk-based approach is going to be really, really important. How? Let's look at it. Firstly, you need to understand where you stand in terms of your DevSecOps maturity. Are you like fully comfortable? Have you been using DevSecOps for maybe a year or two? Are your tools fully tuned? You have to look at all of that. Then you need to understand what you're trying to protect. What are the crown jewels of your organization? Then, if you know what they are, you have to categorize them. Maybe something like platinum, gold, silver, bronze, right? So you can categorize your applications in these categories. Then, define risk appetite for each category. Like, for example, if, as a bank, if I've got an app out there that is used by my customers, handles PII, internet-facing, that's probably I want to put in the platinum category, right? Because it's really, really critical. And for that application, I say, if my tool detects critical, high, and medium vulnerabilities, I want to fix these before I release to production. So you can apply that model to other categories as well. Maybe for the bronze, you only want to fix critical. So you don't really want to look into if your tool detects low or medium vulnerabilities. That means you can tune your tools to only report on critical, and even if the tool detects the other vulnerabilities, your pipeline isn't going to fail. So you take the risk-based approach. I'm not defining it. Your team, your organization needs to define what that risk appetite looks like for your applications. And I'm not using a blanket failure across the pipelines or across the applications. So that's where, you know, if your DevOps or the developers team argue with you as with the security teams, well, you can show them this is defined by the organization. This is not a security score. This is organization score. Then, yeah, you tune your tools based on that. Measure your success. So you implement a DevSecOps program, right? How do you measure your success? I came across these metrics. So if you're already using DevOps, you can look at what is your mean time to detect, how quickly you're detecting security issues, how quickly you're remediating, what's the vulnerability density, how many vulnerabilities you're seeing in a single application, how much test coverage you have across your code base, then how many tools you've integrated and how many applications those tools are scanning against, and then how many false positives you are seeing as part of your tooling that you've implemented. So these are the metrics that you can use if you are doing DevSecOps. And then if, you know, for all of this, if you still need external help, then engage with third parties who can then come in and help you with your DevSecOps journey. So as I promised, I'm going to show you a pipeline that I've put together using open source tooling, and I've embedded these tools in every phase of the CI/CD, which will detect security issues. So what that pipeline looks like, it looks like this. We've got like 5 different stages. And you can see I've integrated security tooling, for example, software composition analysis here, 2 software composition analysis, 2 static application security testing tools, Trufflehawk to detect secrets. Then I release my build to Docker Hub, Docker registry. There, I use Sneak to scan that Docker image. After that, I pull the Docker image, I deploy it to my production environment or deployment server, in my case. In your instance, it could be an EC2 instance or maybe a Kubernetes cluster or something. And then, once it's deployed there to my deployment server, I am using dynamic application security testing like ZAP, NICTO, and scanning that application. And then I'm also running Nmap scan against it. So this is all open source. It's like I built it in my lab. I'm going to quickly show you what that looks like. So I'm logged into GitLab, if you can see. So I'm using GitLab for this. And GitLab, in this YAML file, I've defined all the jobs that I just showed you previously. And here, you can see the tools that are integrated, for example, right? And I just want to show you quickly, right? Here, that's the power of implementing tooling in DevSecOps, because with one line, I'm pulling the Docker container that is responsible for running ZAP with its baseline scan to scan my application. So you can do this with different tooling that's available to you. And let's see what that looks like. What has ZAP picked up? So I will look here, ZAP, click on it. Obviously, you can look at different outputs of ZAP as well. But here, it shows me the testing that it's done, how many tests are passed, and how many tests have produced warnings. For example, HTTP only flag is not set. And we know it is important against XSS protection. Didn't have to wait for pen test to tell me that. Automated, it picked it up. Now, these tools you can tune further to do more authenticated application testing as well. So they can find more granular level issues, right? So this is an example of ZAP. Let's look at the static application security testing tool that we embedded to identify security vulnerabilities in the code base. So here, it detected, for example, it picked up there is a hard-coded password in my source code. Again, it's a bad practice. It picked it up. I can give this feedback to the developers. They can remove it, store it in a secrets manager or something. Then it picked up there is a command injection vulnerability, and that is actually true positive, and it is a vulnerability. And then there is a SQL injection vulnerability, which is a false positive. Why? Because we are converting whatever is user-supplied into strings. So that means even though it's a user-supplied input, but it's not going to result in a SQL injection or anything. But as you can see, there is going to be false positives, there is going to be true positives, and that's where, as security professionals, security engineers, you're going to help your DevOps team triage these issues, right? So that's what you can do. Cool, so that's what that whole pipeline looks like. You can see all the other outputs and stuff here for software composition analysis and things. But yeah, I just want to quickly show you. I ran Nmap against my web server. It picked up there are SSH port open and the one that is exposed to to the world, which is port 8000, where the web application is listening on. So let's just cover what else we've got left. Okay, we covered that. Yep, we've covered that. Okay, so last but not least, I just want to share some tips in the end that you can probably take away from this talk. Every time you talk about DevSecOps, any tool that you're going to implement, make sure you can fully automate it. As I said, there is no place for ClickOps in DevOps or DevSecOps. So everything needs to be fully automated. The scan that your tools are doing, make sure they are no longer than 5 or 10 minutes. Because if it's longer than 10 minutes, it's not going to fly in the DevOps world. Measure your success using KPIs and metrics. Define them and measure yourself on that. Don't fail the pipelines if your DevSecOps maturity is low. Only start to fail pipeline once you know that your tools are fully tuned and you have what it takes to start failing the pipelines. Then you have to tune your tools. Don't just use out-of-the-box tools with their default configuration. You have to make sure that your tools are tuned based on your application's context. Collaborate more. Establish Slack channels, team channels, or whatever platform that you have where security teams are presenting, your developers are presenting if something that they found that is interesting to share, and that's what's going to keep that ball going. It's going to really, really help you in a long run. So you have to collaborate more. Last, another thing, don't forget the activities that you have to do in the far right. That being, once your artifact or application is deployed in production, you still have to worry about it. You still have to do the continuous vulnerability scanning, monitoring, pen testing, and all of that stuff. So don't forget about that. Train your security champions to do threat modeling. That's going to go a long, long way, and you will see the fruits of it if you can train them properly. And when you're writing your security tests, write tests for API authorization issues. And I can tell you, if you can do that well, number of API vulnerabilities that you would detect as part of your DevSecOps journey would be huge. And that's going to significantly improve your security posture. That's it for me. Any questions? Yes?
That table of yours of open source tooling, is it available online to grab anywhere?
I think the slides will be available on the website. Yes, definitely. Yeah. If you're shy and you're going to ask me, you can definitely talk to me after the talk as well. But yeah, would love to. Please.
Of your pipeline by developers. So if you and I got 500 developers in the company and I got this pipeline ready for developers to consume to run on my scans, any KPIs or open source tool to actually measure that they are integrating my pipeline into their pipeline and they're using that code?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah. I did a bit of a research on that. I haven't found an automated way of doing that just yet. But yeah, that would be a good thing to develop maybe.
Yeah, I've been doing some research on it for a while and I couldn't find anything. So,
yes. No, that's a really good point. Thank you. Yeah, it's good. There you go.
Hi. Could you recommend any resources for people who want to learn more about implementing DevSecOps?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, I would recommend there is a GitHub repository called Awesome DevSecOps. I forgot to link it, but it's there. It has all of the probably talks from different people all around the world. There are different resources that they've shared. Yeah, but I've certainly remembered to put that on my LinkedIn post, and so you can click on it. But yeah, there are lots of stuff. And OWASP has really, really good resources on DevSecOps as well as part of this SAM project.
So I guess the question I have is more around the more established companies, and essentially change in those companies is often difficult. How would you recommend you sort of approach that, where I don't know, getting a new tool is a mission, getting buy-in is a mission, getting, getting any sort of agreement is a mission.
Yeah. So what I would suggest, as I was talking about like starting small, look at that organizations like what sort of assets they have. For example, you can pick up one application that's using the modern stack, using CI/CD already, for example. You can look at some of the established, well-maintained open source tools. You can say you can only do one, to begin with, you can only do one thing good. Say you are doing software composition analysis to pick up vulnerable dependencies in that code base, right? So you do that, maybe do that for a couple of weeks and prove to the organization that by doing this, you are already detecting what's vulnerable in your code base. And then if that proves value, you pick up like maybe a SaaS open source alternative and implement that. So if you say you pick up, I don't know, 10% of the vulnerabilities with that open source tool without spending anything as part of that code base, that's a big win for the organization. So by just doing these little things, you can prove to the organization that why this is important. And again, you're not breaking the bank or anything like that. It's all like you're picking up a tool, you're proving the value, and then you're just iterating from there. So that helped in number of organizations that I've worked with. Before I would say, look, I need Veracode or I need check marks to do SaaS and stuff like that. But proving the value, I think, with open source would be quite good to begin with. Yeah.
Right. Do you recommend or have any checklist or template maybe to identify the application criticality? I mean, to categorize the application criticality, do you have any checklist sort of thing or a template?
Yes. Yeah, sure. I can certainly share that. Yes. Yeah, again, I do have that. Yes. So you could look at, as I was probably talking about how you can categorize different applications. In your organization, it might be a little bit different from what that template would look like, but certainly you can take some help from the template. Yes, I do have that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Awesome. I hope you found the talk useful, and if you did, yeah, please feel free to reach out to me.